Everywhere I look, everyone seems to be focusing on what's wrong with the world.
Two shooters were initially believed involved in the mass shooting.
ISIS has now claimed responsibility for today's deadly terror attack.
Initially reported as a 7.9 quake, it was upgraded.
The worst outbreak of the deadly Ebola virus. Police believe the attack may have been a hate crime.
On this podcast, we choose to focus on the good.
We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
I can tell you from experience, the effect you have on others is the most valuable currency there is.
The only thing we have to fear is fear itself.
Many times when it appears that something is happening to you, it is always happening for you.
Because I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character.
Every single one of us makes a difference every single day.
That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to the second episode of the Focus on the Good podcast. I am so excited that you're here with me today and that you're here for your weekly dose of positivity. And I know that today's episode is definitely not going to disappoint. We have an amazing time. This interview is absolutely incredible. Today we have Mount Everest climber John Beede. Have you ever wondered what it would be like to climb Mount Everest? Have you ever wondered what it would be like standing on top of that mountain, what it would take to prepare for that, and what you would learn from climbing Mount Everest? I know that I have, and I got to ask these questions of John, what it was like, what he learned, and it is absolutely incredible. I know that you are going to love it. Now, I hope that you listened to last week's episode with Diamond Dallas Page. He shares some absolutely amazing pieces of wisdom that if you haven't listened to it yet, go back, do yourself a favor, and listen to that podcast. It is really, really incredible. The things that he shares, the wisdom that he shares. He's known for being an extremely positive person. And one of the things that he addresses that I think really hit me was that he said that he's not positive all the time. He isn't positive all the time. He has to work at it. He has to work at it. It's not something that just comes easy. It's something that takes work. And I know that for myself, I'm not always positive. Sometimes I'm in a bad mood. Sometimes I'm upset. Sometimes I'm fearful. Sometimes I have a scarcity mindset. But I have to work at it. And I think that most people who know me see me as a very positive person, and that is because it's something that I have prioritized. So I loved it when DDP talked about that. And that's something that we should all think about. We should all think about when sometimes we're the hardest person on ourselves. We are the hardest people on ourselves. And I know that's especially true for me, where when I'm not being that positive person or having the mindset that I know I should have, because I value having a positive mindset so much. Obviously, why else would I be hosting this show? It's something I value so much. And when I'm not in that state, sometimes I get really hard on myself. I get down on myself. I get upset with myself. But I have to remind myself that it's okay. This is a process. It's not about perfection. It's about progress. Progress, not perfection. Just think about that all the time. And remember, to have that positive attitude all the time takes work. It really does take work. So don't be so hard on yourself. Give yourself permission to not be there all the time, but just get back up tomorrow. Get back up tomorrow and be better than you were today. So if you haven't listened to last week's episode, check it out. It is absolutely incredible. I know that you're going to love it. And today's episode is going to be amazing. You are going to love hearing John Beede's stories. Not only his stories, but also he has some incredible advice, some absolutely incredible advice for success in your life, and also just to how to make the people around you feel valued, feel important, and really make the world a better place around you just by how you interact with individuals. It's really incredible. It's at the end of the podcast. He shares a really valuable gem on how we can make the world around us a better place in every single day, everywhere we go, every moment throughout our lives, what we can do to make the world around us a better place. That's at the very end. On top of being a Mount Everest climber and worldwide adventurer, John is also a highly acclaimed motivational speaker and author. He has presented to more than 500,000 live audience members in 46 U.S. states and 6 countries. That's every single continent except for Antarctica, which is really cool. He is just such a great example of living his message of goal setting, productivity, and high performance. You're going to love this interview. I know that I had a great time being a part of it. And before we jump into it, I just want to say thank you again for listening. If you're enjoying this, please share it with somebody who needs a little more positivity in their lives. We all know people who maybe they're going through something. Maybe they're down because of something, or maybe they're just hit a roadblock in life. Whoever that person is, share this podcast with them. It's something that can inspire them and move them forward and move them past whatever it is that's holding them back right now. Also, please share this podcast through your social media platforms and always use the hashtag #FocusOnTheGood. Also, iTunes reviews are greatly appreciated. If you like the podcast, just go to iTunes, put a 5-star review, and then write a little bit about what you enjoy about the podcast. That would be greatly, greatly appreciated. So thank you so much for listening. I know you're going to love this interview today, and let's jump right into it. All right, I am here with world adventurer, Everest climber, author, and motivational speaker, John Beede. John, how are you doing today?
Fantastic. How are you, Jake?
I am just doing awesome. I'm very excited to have you here with me today. Let's just jump right into it. You know, you climbed Mount Everest. What year was that? 2014?
2013, the last climbable season, because in 2014 there was an avalanche, and 2015 was the earthquake.
So no one has climbed it since then?
There have been a few summits, but I was amongst the last group, probably even the last 100 or so people that reached the summit.
Wow, that is amazing. I did not know that. That is cool. Because there's some pretty serious things that have to happen in order to be able to climb. A lot of safety measures, right?
Oh, yeah, that's like the understatement of the decade. Absolutely.
That's awesome. That is so cool.
It's cool for me. Of course, it's tragic for the last 2 seasons and everyone that's been involved with them, of course.
That is true. That is very true. Now I don't feel very good anymore.
Let's start this call off on a high note, shall we?
Oh, my goodness. Tell me about, when somebody sits down next to you, you're sitting on an airplane and somehow climbing Mount Everest comes up. And I know that it's such a weighted question to say, tell me about climbing Mount Everest. But tell me about climbing Mount Everest.
Yeah, so if you were sitting next to me on an airplane and we just looked directly out lateral with the plane, that's the altitude that we're climbing at its summit. It's 29,035 feet above sea level. If you ask the Chinese government, 29,029 feet above sea level. If you ask the Tibetan government, they kind of argue about how tall it actually is. But not a lot of people realize it is. It's kind of like a fight, because China wants to say that they have the biggest mountain in the world. So even though it's the same mountain, they say it's taller than the Tibetan mountain. Kind of just a weird political thing.
That's awesome.
So anyway, not a lot of people realize it's a 2-month climb, 9 months of dedicated preparation for me, and 17 years of being a mountaineer and a climber, summiting literally hundreds of mountains around the world, getting ready for every possible scenario. Lower myself into crevasses on Mount Rainier intentionally to learn how to get out of them in case I accidentally fall into one on Everest. Spending 20 to 30-hour days around the Colorado mountains, the Sierra Nevadas, just building up my endurance. Spending time in Alaska, Denali, the Caucasus, and Africa, learning how to battle the coldest temperatures. On Everest, it got down to 40 degrees below zero with a 25-mile-an-hour wind. That's 91 degrees Fahrenheit below zero. That's cold stuff. So you got to be ready for every condition.
Wow. So doing that and doing all that preparation, do you think was it harder than you expected it to be, or were you pretty prepared?
I was prepared physically. It was much harder emotionally and mentally than I had ever imagined that it would be, for many different factors. But the biggest one is why a lot of the older climbers make it, and younger climbers, like guys in their 20s who are physically much stronger than I was, much stronger than many other climbers in the mountain, they don't make it because they have a day or two or a week of really strong, good climbing energy of them. But then after a month or 6 weeks of sleeping on ice every night, and the glacier is moving and cracking beneath you, and every single day you're putting in 8 to 12-hour days before the summit, it wears on them so much that they don't have the endurance to make it. And so that was the hardest part for me, was every single day waking up. Everybody doubts themselves every day. So giving yourself a real like motivational pep talk on a daily basis, sometimes an hourly or minute by minute basis, when you think, I'm going to fail, I'm not going to make this. 9 people on the mountain died that season. You see this happening all around you, and you have to dig deep to find your own motivation and your drive to finish this climb.
What was your motivation? What kept driving you?
That's man, it is not like in the movies when they say, like, why are we, like on the Everest movie that just came out,
yeah.
why are we here to climb? And the answer, which is to me this like incredibly hollow answer, because it's there. Like, that's the lamest answer you can come up with. For me, it's a lot deeper answer. It has to do with really the truthful answer is that it has to do with me wanting to battle death. I value life so much that somehow in my youth and my childhood, and being in a part of some difficult situations where friends were killed, and then in my early 20s, I've been around a lot of just happenstance car accidents and mountaineering accidents, and me hating that so much that got so deep into my psyche that I pushed even harder in mountaineering, that I wanted to get to like battle the worst that the world had to offer me. And I thought that Everest was that, like put myself in the most intense possible conditions and say, screw you, death, life is the most valuable thing we have. I'm not letting you get me. I know that's kind of like a deep psychological thing, but that's what I had to figure out for myself. Not even sure that I realized that until I was done with Everest.
That's amazing. Not only is that amazing, that's really deep. That's just cool that's how you have dealt with those emotions.
A lot of people go and climb Everest because I want to stroke my ego, or I've got like, there's a lot of wealthy people that go and they want to just like show off to their buddies that they climbed Everest or whatever that is. For me, it was a very intense personal battle of valuing life.
So when did you decide to climb Mount Everest? When did that decision come about?
I didn't even know that there was a tallest mountain in the world until I was in Scouts when I was 13, 14 years old. 17, 18, I started really getting serious about climbing. And then when I was in my early 20s, I went and climbed Mount Rainier in Washington State. And interestingly enough, it was failing at climbing Mount Rainier that made me think, I have what it takes to climb Mount Everest. I don't have it right now, but I think that I can learn from this, and I love being out here so much that I want to go after it.
So failing at Rainier is what made you think that you can do Everest.
Yeah,
How does that work?
Great question. I'm a super defiant human being.
Okay.
So if somebody tells me I can't do something, I'm like, screw you, you're wrong. Absolutely, I can do it.
Even if that someone is you.
Yeah, or if it's a mountain, or if especially if it's me.
Yeah.
Because I want to be the best human being that I possibly can. So if I don't have a capability of doing something, but I really love doing it, then I want to gain every skill that I can in order to continue enjoying that thing and to do it successfully.
That's cool. What a great way to look at life, because so many people just go around so defeated, and they can't do something and they just, not everyone can do that. And I love it. What a great attitude.
You know, I have this concept of called loving the idiot phase. And and when you're a kid, if you like I'm at the bank, and this little kid just starts dancing in line, and the mom is like, stop it, we're at a bank. And this kid's like, he's smiling and he's just loving like this new exploration of his body and feeling himself dancing. And he's like trying out these new moves. And the mom's like, no, stop. And it's just such a sad thing that when we're kids, we try everything we can, and failing to us as kids is fun. It's like, ooh, cool, challenge. And then somehow we get this voice in our ears, which is essentially the mom in that scenario of, no, stop, like you're embarrassing me. But our natural state isn't to be embarrassed by failure. Our natural state is to be challenged and encouraged by that. So when I say love the idiot phase, it's like, get back in touch with who you are as a child. Jake, you go play a song and you can't get like a chord progression, or I don't know the music terms well enough, but if you're trying like a lick on your guitar and you're like, dang it, I can't find that. There's a part of you that I truly believe all of us have that says, like, this is a challenge, get it, like figure that out, rather than, oh, you're an idiot, you suck, which is also a voice that we have now, but I think we're conditioned for that second voice. The first voice is our true and natural one. Like, this is fun, play with this. Love that idiot phase when you aren't skilled at something.
Oh, you're speaking to me, man. That's like exactly. I think that so much. That's even something I say and I talk about. Was a middle school or a high school choir teacher I had that said that every kid can sing until someone comes around and tells them they can't.
I remember that from your speech.
Yeah, and it's just we all have that, and you're right. Kids, they don't have any concept of what failing means until they're told that failing is bad.
Yeah, it's like if there's a bunch of kids in a race, and if you just lined up a bunch of kids and you didn't even tell them you're in a race and say, everybody, run to the other side of the park, every single one of those kids would love it. Nobody would think like, oh, I was last, I suck, or I was first. If they're like 3, 4, 5 years old, they're all just like, yay, we're running.
Yeah.
And on Everest, I didn't set any records. Like, I wasn't the youngest person to go up. I wasn't the fastest. I was just there like, yay, I'm climbing. Essentially like the kid. I didn't make that noise, but you know what I mean? It's just for the sake of doing that thing that brought me joy in life. That's why I climb Everest.
That's amazing. Now, what did you learn on Mount Everest that surprised you?
Oh, gosh. You learn a lot about yourself in 2 months on a mountain when you're battling elements every single day. I think the thing that surprised me, so the question is, what did I learn about myself?
It could be anything. What did you learn that surprised you?
Okay, so the thing that surprised me most on all of Everest was summiting on summit night. So we leave at 7 p.m. And the reason we do this is we climb to the summit, ideally arriving at sunrise, and then you get back down before the following afternoon's storms hit. They usually come in around 1 p.m., 2 p.m., and so you want to be done with your climb by then. So in the night, it was around 2 o'clock in the morning, I come across another climber who was literally on his last breaths. He had attempted to summit the night before. He successfully summited, and then on his descent, he got cerebral edema and was lying there frozen into the ice. And he had not been seen alive by anyone for 6-7 hours. Everybody had thought that he was dead. When I came up to him, he had, I guess, like a spasm of life. He wasn't conscious, but something in him sparked himself to move his arms. And remember, it's completely dark, and all I have is a headlamp. I'm so high above the curvature of the earth that I'm looking down on stars beneath me. And it's absolutely freezing. It's about 35 degrees below zero at this point. And I come across this guy, and he had just had these few little spasms. And the thing that surprised me most was that I took everybody that I could physically stand in order to stay with him until my hands and my feet couldn't take it any longer. And who knows? He may have even been dead at that point, and just in this weird, like if you cut off a lizard's tail, the tail still moves. It could, like science could have allowed that to be what was going on for him. But there was this moment of every single person needs to have someone with them as they're dying. And man, this is kind of a weird, dark way to look at life, but You know, some people say like you die the minute you're born, you start dying the minute you're born. But I think that we all need people with us. Like we're meant as social creatures. And in that last moment when he was either gone or beyond being helped, he needed that. I could like feel the spirit from him, or this vibe. Like he needed me there with him. He couldn't see me. His eyes were frozen shut, so there's no way that he could have like known what I looked like. But I just felt like I knew that his presence, or his last breath, knew that I was there. And after he wasn't moving anymore for 15, 20 minutes, I picked myself up and just had to warm up my hands and feet at that point by moving and developing that body heat. And on the way down, I came across his body again, and now it was my turn, and I was exhausted, and I had this fluid building up in my lungs, which is called pulmonary edema, and fighting against my own clock to see if I would make it down. And then it was thinking about the people who needed me to be with them throughout their lives, which is what ultimately got me down. And it became every single step, literally like, this step is for Jake Ballantyne. Well, you weren't the first one, I got to say.
That's okay. Well, I didn't meet you till afterwards, so
that's
it would have
true,
been
actually.
if it was today.
I forgot about that, but it started with my family. Like, this step I'm going to take from my mother. This step I'm going to take from my father. Then my brothers and sisters. Then my dog. I started thinking about like elementary school friends and teachers, mentors that I had. Every one of them, whether I'd see them or not, I couldn't let myself go in the same way that I suppose he did. Or I mean, of course, circumstances were different, but I couldn't bear to think about the tragedy that, or the grief that they would go through had I not given every bit of energy I could to get myself down safely. That was a perspective aligning surprise that I had no clue would have shown me the depths of where my strength could come from because of other people.
Wow, that's incredible. And there's no way that anyone could have that kind of experience if they didn't put themselves in that kind of place where you were at.
I mean, a lot of people look at it like, that's ridiculous. Like, a lot of people don't understand the drive to mountaineer, or like these guys that do their squirrel suit jumping. I look at that and I'm like, that's ridiculous. You know, the wingsuits, like jumping off cliffs. I'm like, that's ridiculous. But for that person, that's what calls out to them, and that's where they come to life. And everybody has their risk-reward ratio, and I'll never understand like the life of a musician, for example. And you may never understand the life of a mountaineer, but we can both mutually look at each other and say, I get that that's where you come to life, and that's where you're called to, and that's where your journey, not only where you're called to, but where you must be if you're going to learn what you're here on this earth to learn.
No, I completely agree. What would you tell someone who wants to climb Mount Everest?
Don't.
Really? That's
no.
your...
You know, I've never met somebody that says, you know, I really want to climb Mount Everest, that has a real grasp of mountaineering.
That is already been doing other mountaineering things.
Yeah, well, I can't say never, because I've met some people that are on their quest for the 7 summits, and they've been on Denali or some like Aconcagua in South America and the Andes, and they understand like, okay, these are big mountains. But most people who come up to me and say, hey, I want to climb Mount Everest, they're saying it in the same way that I would say like, hey, I want to climb Half Dome, or I want to climb Mount Shasta, which are day or overnight climbs for like Mount Shasta.
Yeah.
So I would say to them, awesome. You have a huge dream and goal in front of you. And if you truly want to climb Everest, be ready to pay a price in a way that you don't understand right now. Like, and I'm not talking financially. I'm saying like the skill level that you need to get together, the emotional toll or journey that this is going to take you throughout your life. If you're truly going to go after this thing, be prepared to be changed as a human being, because it is much bigger than your brain can even wrap itself around right now.
So when you talk about 9 months of heavy preparation, I mean, that was like full time, just doing everything that you could to prepare?
Yeah, my days would start with, it was a full-time job. It was 8 to 12 hours of training every single day. And I'd do three days on, 1 day off, just constantly for 9 months. And on those 1 day off, I remember one time I was like 4 months into training, and I get into an Epsom salt bath and I take ice baths and to stop my muscles from getting too inflamed, and I'd also take Epsom salt baths. And one time I took like this jar of Bengay, or this icy hot, I think it was, and I was so exhausted that I just was like, I need some of this in the bath with me, and I fell asleep as I'm squeezing this bottle of icy hot, and I squeezed the entire bottle into the bathtub with me, and I wake up, I don't know how long later, but I'm like freezing and burning because this whole bottle of icy hot is like mixed in bath with me. I'm like, I cannot figure out for the life of me what's going on. I'm like, oh, it's so cold, oh, it's so hot, oh my god. So like I was so tired, and that's just like this funny snippet, but I was tired because I do interval training for 90 minutes in the morning, usually 60 to 120 miles on a bicycle, swim sprints for about an hour and a half to 2 hours, take some rest time, and then every day I would simulate Everest summit day, because if I knew I could do a summit in training, that when summit day actually came around, it wouldn't be that big of a deal to me. So every single day I would climb 3,000 vertical feet, which is what summit day is, from 26,000 to 29,000 feet. And I, in the real deal, you only have about 20 pounds on your pack, but I knew that the altitude would affect me. So in my training, I would put between 80 and 120 pounds in a backpack and either go up a stair stepper or a real mountain nearby, or if it was like 1,000 feet that I could find, I would just do laps on that mountain, carrying this weight up and down to simulate the exhaustion that I would feel on Everest.
That's absolutely amazing. Here's my last Everest-related question, and that is, what's the biggest thing that you learned about success while this whole process, whether it's preparing, whether it was actually on the mountain or after the mountain?
You know, the tough climbers, interestingly enough, I went with a group, and there was about 35 clients for this company, International Mountain Guides, and there are 3 groups, and you can sort of switch back and forth between them all, depending on if you're stronger, you move up to group 1, or if you're weaker, you move back to the 3rd group, and then they stagger the summit climbs. And fascinatingly enough, the people who made it into the 1st and 2nd group didn't summit at the same rate of or the same percentage as those of us in the last group. So I got kicked back to the last group because I was having some lung problems, which I already referred to, but they started earlier in the mountain. So I'm there, and I've got my bad lungs. I'm there with a guy who's blind in one eye, the fat guy of the group, a Chinese girl who couldn't communicate with anybody and was just physically weaker, being female. It's just her plight. So it's us. And then one guy who had his toes frostbitten. So
wow.
So we're the last group to go up. Everybody else has been blasted off the mountain by windstorms, by snow, by cold, by exhaustion, both emotional and physical. And then of our group, we had the highest success rate because I noticed that we were the people who were kind of told no, you know, and it's we were like the Rockies, like we were the underdogs of the whole mountain, who nobody gave us a second thought or chance. And then together we banded like, guys, we got to just stick together here. We're gonna play it safe, keep it slow, steady, endure. And because we fought together as a team, we made it up in a higher percentage than those who fought the mountain as individuals. And that was really surprising to me because we're world-class athletes on this mountain. And the people who did it alone, a lot of them couldn't make it because they couldn't endure over the long term because they didn't rely on others. They relied on themselves. So that was my biggest success lesson is you can never be strong enough to beat everything in the world. You have to have a team. You have to have a family. You have to bring your friends with you. That is integral to the definition of success.
That's so cool that you found that there, and that it carries over to every single part of life. That's really awesome. Now that you've done this, what's next? What's the next adventure?
Yeah, I'm going to climb the tallest mountain on Mars, and I hear there's some cool mountains on Pluto.
That's about it, right?
Like, well, there's nothing higher. I mean, what do you do now?
Yeah.
There are other mountains that are metaphorical mountains. Family relationships are a big one that I've kind of put aside, and learning these big lessons that I have throughout mountaineering and Everest. Kilimanjaro is another big one where I learned about family because my father went. So I want to focus on these things. I'm also focusing on my speaking career, writing, and I want to create some online courses that I can really inspire people to, as cliche as it sounds, to pursue their own big mountains and their Everests for their lives.
So going with that, like, what do you think that people can do to pursue their Everest, to pursue their mountain, to find that peak to climb on?
Well, the first thing is to become actually clear about what that mountain is. A lot of a lot of people are, I think, waiting for inspiration to come to them or to get permission to go after the thing that they truly know is their mountain or their big thing for their life, but they don't, for whatever reason, believe that they can go after it unless like a boss tells them, hey, this is your thing, or if their parents suddenly like say, hey, this is what you need to be doing with their life. But I think we all know what that is somewhere deep down inside of us. And it's a matter of getting clear about it by truly listening. And all of us can hear what our inner calling is in different ways. Some of us, it's a long hike, or it's playing music, or it's writing and journaling. But whatever the way that is, or sitting in a hot tub, who knows and who cares? But whatever it is for that person, really genuinely listening to what the thing is that would bring them most to life. Because I think it's Mary Williamson quote that's what the world needs is not. Let's see, how does it go? What the world needs most is people who have come alive. God, do you remember how that one goes?
Yeah, the world doesn't need more people to ask what the world needs. We need more people to ask what makes me alive. Something like that. I know what you're talking about, but I don't know the quote.
That quote is whatever it is.
But it's about what we need is not people just saying, what does the world need? What you really need is, the world needs people who are alive. So you should be asking yourself, what makes you alive? And that's what the world needs.
Here it is, Howard Thurman. Don't ask what the world needs. What makes you come alive, and go out and do it, because what the world needs is people who have come alive. There we go. It's properly attributed to Howard Thurman, and we have the actual quote. We did it, Jake.
Perfect. I love it.
So by really looking deep into your own, however it is that your body, your mind, your spirit calls to you and tells you this is what you're here for, get that clearly in front of you. The next thing to do, after you know what that thing clearly is to be willing to pay the price. Everything has a price. Fame has a price. Earning money has a price. And I'm not talking necessarily about a financial price. I'm talking about the commitment that you need in order to become both skilled at that thing and the time that it takes to go after gaining those skills. Because if you say your thing is to be a marathon runner or a triathlete, if you just go out and run a triathlon, okay, you've done it. But then if you want to truly honor that calling, you need to become your best possible triathlete self or your best possible runner self. And the only way that you can do that is by becoming as highly skilled at that as you can. So that takes emotional investment, it takes time investment, and it takes financial. That's the price. Are you truly willing to pay it? If so, then you move on to the next step, which is actually going through those preparational steps and then completing it. That's what I think people can do in order to reach that calling of their own.
That's like I don't know. You just put every bit of success advice you need into a short sound bite. That was perfect. That I feel inspired. I need to
All right,
get more
we're done.
clear.
I'm out of
That's perfect.
You know, it's funny though, because like there's so many motivational speakers in the world, and there's so many that have been, and just random people who are motivational. I truly believe, and the Bible even says this, there's nothing new under the sun. Like the same advice that Plato and Socrates gave applies to us today, and we're just repeating it with different hooks. Like I have my mountaineering hook, and you have a music hook, and we're mutual friends with Josh Shipp. Like he has his abused as a child story that inspires certain people, and it's just bringing that different hook to the world that certain people resonate with. So like the thing I've pursued is this mountaineering and outdoor adventure thing. That's the hook that I have, that I hope that these success lessons that I think we all deep down know, I just reword it in a different way, and hopefully we can synthesize it, and you can synthesize it in a way that people resonate with as many other people as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. So when and why did you start speaking?
I started speaking when I was 15 years old. I wanted to be on the speech and debate team to become a better skit, to do better skits at Scout Camp.
Really?
Yep.
Wow.
So I did forensics, and I did that's the name of it, the speech and debate team in high school. So I did oratory and humorous interpretation. Eventually went to nationals, competed there, and ended up loving it. So then I continued as a stand-up comic in university, graduated with a degree in mass communications rather. So I did radio, television, things like this. Instantly started a stand-up comedy career that totally flopped, and I realized on a drive back from Havre, Montana for a gig for about 12 drunks in a bar, all the way driving to Las Vegas, that wasn't fulfilling to me, that I wanted to do something bigger. I was listening to a Brian Tracy tape, or I wanted, not bigger, but I wanted to influence people more directly. It's not like a judgment on comedy. Anyway, so I'm driving back and I realized, man, I saw those speakers in high school, like those motivational speakers. Why don't I just bring like this comedy to students and then also teach them what I've learned through all these mountaineering and adventure stories? Because then I was like rock climbing and teaching climbing at these camps in the summer. Why don't I just bring some of those cool stories? And so as a substitute teacher, as well, to supplement my comedy income, because you can't really make it as a comedian, I started just telling my stories whenever there weren't any lesson plans left over. And then that developed and grew, and I started filming myself, probably very illegally. As a substitute teacher, I'd film the speeches that I gave and like have the kids cheer for me as I came in, and they loved it because it's like the last thing they expect their substitute teacher to be doing. And kind of developed a promo tape from that, and I knew that other speakers were out there making thousands of dollars speaking, and I'm like, man, I want to do that. That sounds great. Like I not only would get to make people laugh, but I get to get them to think in a different way and hopefully share some of my life inspiration with them. So that's how it started.
Wow, I had no idea that was what the start for you was. I didn't know you did stand-up comedy. That's really cool. Also, you mentioned, so were you working at scout camps?
Yeah, I did about 8 total years working at a scout camp up in Washington by Mount Baker.
Wow. So are you an Eagle Scout?
I sure am. You know it.
Hey.
Eagle's Nest for life.
Me too. I'm an Eagle Scout as well.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's awesome. I had no idea. I didn't know that. That is super cool. So someone who's in, maybe the same spot that you were in, someone who wants to become a speaker, I think that's a lot of people listening to this may be a part of that. What should they do?
There are 2 sides to and this is probably common knowledge. There's 2 sides to the speaking business. There is the business side of it, and there's the craft or the art of it. So let's break each of these down. In order to develop the craft, there are a lot of programs that you can go through to become a better speaker. And ultimately, and I start with this because that's what's going to be the most important side of your business. It's like Apple computers. If they had crappy computers, it wouldn't matter how great their marketing was or how cool their advertising was or their packaging. None of that matters if the product sucks. So the first thing you have to do is focus on your product and have an awesome one. That's to create a great speech and to be good on stages. So things like organizations like Toastmasters, National Speakers Association, as I stutter over it, are all really great systems to become a highly skilled speaker. If you're a high school student or a college student, you probably have a speech and debate team at your school. And if you have none of these things in your life, then you can call up Rotary clubs, Kiwanis clubs, Toastmasters, other Toastmasters groups, let's see, Lions, Business Networking International, Chambers of Commerce, and offer to speak for them at no charge. And so you cut your teeth this way by giving these presentations in front of other audiences. I call these value exchange gigs because I do not recommend going out and speaking for free. Instead, you're going out and you're not getting paid, but what you're getting in exchange is going to be referrals, testimonials. You're going to film these events. You're going to take photographs at these events. And by doing this, you're getting paid in the building blocks for your business side of it. So you're simultaneously building these business blocks as you are developing your craft. Now we move on to the business side of it. You get all these things together, and then you must look at your business as though it's just that, a business. A lot of speakers think I'm just going to be awesome, and then I'm going to sit around and wait for the phone to ring. Yeah. Or I'm going to just send out an annoying email blast to 1,000 people or 10,000 brochures out, and then they sit back and they don't do anything else. Wrong. Bring hustle to it. And I really, truly believe in the power of a campaign. Better than mailing out a brochure to 1,000 people or emailing your website to a list that you buy. I recommend picking 7 people per day, adding them to a campaign that on day one, you email them. 14 days later, you send them a postcard. 14 days later or a month later, it really doesn't matter what your breakup of these is, but you want to stay in front of these people for 7 individual contacts. And each of those contacts should be unique and individual. So you can bring in postcards, faxes, phone calls, depending on what your time restraints are. But bringing 7 new people into this funnel that you create for yourself every day, and then letting this funnel run its course throughout 6 months or a year. So over 6 months or a year, you're in touch with these people 7 individual times. You develop this relationship, and you're not in each of these contacts asking them, hey, book me, hey, book me, hey, book me. That's like going up to a girl in a coffee shop and you're like, hey, date me. And then you see her at the gym, like 3 months down the line, hey, date me.
Yeah.
Then you see her I don't know, driving down the street and you call up to her at a stop sign, hey, date me. She's going to be like, this guy is freaky. And that's what the same thing what meeting planners are going to think. Instead, you'd want to develop a conversation. You go up and just see if you have anything in common. Same thing in the speaking world. You want to see if those people have any interest and if you can actually even bring them any value. And so it's a more conversational approach. So I don't know how much you want me to go into this, but I have this site, speakercareer.com.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you about this specifically next, so please talk about it.
Yeah, so a little shameless plug here. I've got a site. It's called speakercareer.com, and I walk through all of these steps individually about what to send on which day, how to set up these value exchange gigs, scripts in order to call, and exactly what I say, email scripts, so you can just copy and paste these to mail them, people to mail them to, how to find all these 7 people per day, the whole process of how to create these funnels and actually get booked and transition to being paid from value exchange gigs to paying gigs on stage. So we've got a bunch of cool courses about how to become a better, more skilled speaker, as well as how to develop your business and how to get started, make your first 10 grand as a speaker, and the Kickstart Guide. Whole bunch of courses that anybody over there can get involved in. Just go to speakercareer.com.
That's perfect. What great advice that is. And I've used that advice about the 7 a day and using that campaign, and I've seen huge changes in my career from doing that. So I just want to thank you for that advice, and anyone listening should really take John's advice to heart and check out speakercareer.com.
I look at it like being a sniper rather than shooting a bunch of shotgun pellets.
Yeah.
Rather than Like, hey, I'm going to bail out these 5,000 brochures. Hopefully somebody will book me. Nah, instead, just take your time, wait, get them in the crosshairs, and pull the trigger.
Yeah.
It's so much
in the
easier.
most violent way that you could say it. That's what we should be doing.
When I say I'm going to kill it on stage, I mean I am killing it.
Absolutely literal, very literal. Another thought on speaking. You're about to go in front of your audience, and something happened with the meeting planner. Now all of a sudden he says, "You only have a few minutes to talk." What would be the few minutes that you would share? What are the most important things that you could share to an audience?
Oh gosh, great question. So somebody says like, you got an hour, but now, by the way, we went over and we only have 5 minutes. So
Exactly. The things that we would have stress dreams about at night.
Yeah, right. I would tell them that story of coming across the frozen man on Everest. And I think I can tell that in 5 minutes, and then explain, like I did with your callers, how important it is to make your definition of success about your family and the people that you take with you along the journey. You can accomplish the greatest things in the world. You can get on the biggest stages as a musician. Like you look at Aerosmith, man, those guys were on top of the world, and now they all hate each other. No doubt they're like the loneliest people in the world because they didn't value their relationships. And you can have all sorts of adoring fans from afar, but if you don't have healthy, vibrant, close relationships, you're going to be as empty and unsuccessful as possible. Success is not about dollars in the bank. Success is not about prestige and being in People magazine. Success is a much more intimate definition in my mind.
That's such a healthy answer. That's the best way that I can put it, because you're so right. If you don't have that, then what do you really have? And then keep going.
I was just going to say, don't get me wrong. Like, money is valuable and it has its place, and fame is fun, and like I've walked through airports and had screaming fans from my speeches. Like literally, I've walked onto planes and the plane started applauding because it was filled with people in the audience, and that's a cool moment.
That's
but
awesome.
If you let that get to your head and you think that that's what it's about, you're going to be empty.
So true. You should like have like a tour where you just are speaking to celebrities and they should learn this, So my last question for you is, what is the best thing that a normal person, an everyday individual, can do to make a positive impact on the world around them?
So I could speak like metaphysically right now and talk about how going through life with a great spirit every day would be great. Instead, I'm going to leave people with a tangible task or something that they can do immediately. And that is to challenge themselves to get strangers to smile. So when they go into a bank, make it about the teller, the bank teller. Make it about just being playful with them to a point where you get that person to smile. And if you get that bank teller to smile, ding, 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 you win your task for the day. You get to progress to level 2 of this little weird video game we're playing in our heads. And then when you walk down the street, you're leaving the bank and you see somebody else walking in, just smile at them or make a joke at them. Get that person to smile. Do this so often that it becomes a habit, that everywhere you go, you're renting a vehicle, you are going into work in the morning, you are randomly getting onto a bus on your way to work. Everywhere that you are, you go home and you see your kids or you see your parents, whoever you are, whoever the people are that you interact with, strangers or not, make it your habit of putting smiles on other people's faces. And if you do that, you're going to feel better. The people around you are going to feel better about life. And you're going to see some beautiful side results from it as well, and the connections and the relationships that you have.
That's amazing. If everyone did that, then the world would be absolutely a better place. I love it. John, I can't thank you enough for being a part of the podcast. Thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure, and thank you again. It's been awesome.
Jake, thanks so much, and we'll catch you next time.
All right, thanks, John.
Later.
See ya. Thank you so much for listening. I hope that you enjoyed the podcast as much as I did. I had an amazing time getting to talk with John and learning more from him about his experiences and what we can do to make the world around us a better place. I hope that all of us can take his advice to heart, to remember that the best thing that we can do to make the world around us a better place is just make it our goal to make everyone around us smile. Just make the people at the bank smile, make the people at the grocery store smile, whoever we interact with. And if everyone did that, the entire world would be a better place. I loved that advice. I thought that was so cool. So let's go out and do that this week. Go out there throughout your week, think about that. How can I make the people I interact with smile? What can I do to do that? I thought that was so awesome. I hope that you will take that to heart. I know that I will. And also, if you want to find out more about John and interact with him, you can find him on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, all at John Beede. His website is everestmotivationalspeaker.com. And if you're interested in learning from him about becoming a motivational speaker, that is speakercareer.com. Thank you so much for listening, and as you go throughout this week, remember to focus on the good.